Altior, let's kick off with him first of all. Sadly, we didn't get to see him as often as we all like to. We just saw him in the game spirit, of course, where he was impressive at Newbury. How's he summered it, and what are the plans for him for this season going forward?
Well, I mean, as you say, last year was a disaster. He shouldn't have run at Ascot in the first place. That was our own fault. I think it was a difficult situation. The build-up and the whole thing to the race. If I'd taken him out on the morning of the race, which is what I should have done, I'd have been lynched. So, you know, one felt one owed it to the world to let him run. Shouldn't have done. It knocked him for 6, and I don't think it did Santini him a world of good, to be honest with you. They just weren't ready for a dust-up in their first, you know, if they'd had a prep race, it'd have been a different ball game. It'd have done them both good. They shouldn't have met each other at that stage. It took him a long time to get over it, but he got over it in time for the game spirit. That was fine. And everything was going terrific coming into Cheltenham until about 4 or 5 days before. And he got this splint. And splints are splints. You can't argue with them. He was lame. It was sore. It's been there all along. Never, ever, ever affected him before in his life. So it was just bad luck. He had to stay at home, and that was it. That's all mended. He's in great form. I've never seen him move better. So we're going to go back to the tried and tested route, Tingle Creek, blah, 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 and down to the Champion Chase. So that is the plan, and the only variation might come if you went. You could go the 2.5 at Aintree if you wanted to, or go, or and just probably wait for the Sandown, or you could go to Punchestown. Yeah, but it'll be much the same. The book says what you're going to run in, and that's that.
You've always said he's going to get beaten one day, and as you just alluded to, that happened sadly at Ascot. But how do you feel with him and his condition and well-being going into this season? Because of course he's not getting any younger. He could be vulnerable to the ones coming through the ranks. How do you sort of feel with him going into this season? You still feel he's as good as he ever was?
Yep. I mean, listen, Politologue won the race. You know where we stand with Politologue. I think the nearest he's got is 7 lengths to him in their 3 meetings. Look, you know, all being well, give him some reasonable ground. You know, over 2 miles, he's in terrific shape. He's moving and booming, and I mean, he hasn't galloped yet. He doesn't need to. We've got quite a long time till the Tingle Creek. He's in good form, and he was so well going into Cheltenham. He was, you know, we were confident that he was back to his very best.
Santini, a horse who sort of came so close yet so far from winning the Gold Cup, but he's a real traditional-looking chaser. How's he now? I mean, I should imagine you sort of work quite hard with him to get a bit of weight off. Yeah,
we are. We're sort of, yeah. He did himself very well in the summer. He's still quite heavy. Plan is to try and go to Haydock, really. I'm not convinced. It's very difficult. Champ and he fall into the same category in that I don't think Haydock is necessarily a great track for either of them, and consequently I'm not convinced that Kempton is a great place for them either. They're both proper staying chasers, so we've got to try and, you haven't got a lot of options. So the plan was Santini to go to Haydock. There's no bonus, so we're not chasing anything fancy like that. It's just we've got to start them somewhere. You're nearly working back from March, where you're on the assumption and hope that both are Gold Cup horses, in which case we've got to, the Cotswold Chase will obviously have to come into it for somebody. The Denman at Newbury would have to come into it probably for somebody. I mean, you know, as I say, without Haydock and Cheltenham, I mean, Ireland would be a possibility. I'd say, certainly for Champ.
Sometimes Santini's looked as if he could be even better over a little bit further than the Gold Cup trip of 3.25 miles. Would you ever see him as being a Grand National type of horse?
Well, he jumps like one and he gallops like one. We've never discussed it. I mean, yeah, he's the ideal sort, even more an ideal sort if he was 15 pounds lower. You know, they have a big task with those big weights, don't they, in the Grand National? we'd like to win one, there's no doubt about that. It could come into the equation. I've no idea. I've never discussed it with Richard in any way, and he might say no way. Yeah, I mean, he'd love it. I'm sure he'll stay, yes.
And let's just, so if we can, just talk a little bit more about Champ. I mean, it was a brilliant ride under Barry Geraghty to win the RSA, coming from absolutely nowhere. I mean, did you ever think he was going to get there?
Not jumping the last. I thought he was all right coming down the hill, and then he sort of suddenly, they opened up a fair gap on him, which was surprising that he hadn't got the speed. And this comes to another sort of thing of where we are now, that they opened up on him. When he jumped the last, there were 2 races going on. The first 2 were gone. We booked for third, and that was that. And actually, thinking he was a safe third, I went to watch the 2 up front through wide binoculars, and all of a sudden, this head appeared in my view, and I had no idea what was happening, and it was dear old Champ, and suddenly, well, what he'd done is he'd got his second wind, and consequently, we have just done a wind operation on him, and we were actually doing some schooling with him the other day, and he has spent a bit of time. I just wanted to tidy up his jumping a little bit. He was good, but somewhere his technique wasn't flawless, and he had some time. He had a week with Henrietta Knight, and we did actually change quite a bit. And Nico went and schooled him over there. We were starting to hear a rather suspicious noise. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't there last year. In fact, I'm almost certain it was. And I would say that actually coming from before the second last, he was actually just trying to get his second wind. He wasn't getting maximum. And that's why he had to sit still. He got a breather into him, got his second wind, and then he ran. And I do think, maybe I'm just being a total optimist, but I mean, it certainly needed doing. And if that was there then, that would have, that would have certainly have interfered with him. And I think you can reasonably expect quite a bit of improvement out of this. And I'm hoping our jumping might be just that little bit slicker. If that all fits together, then we're in very good shape. If we're the same horse as last year, we're still in quite good shape. He's the winner of the RSA, and he's the winner of all his completed steeplechases. And he would have won the other one as well anyway. So, he's technically unbeaten over fences. And you'd have to say he's right up there with them.
Let's just talk a bit very briefly about the sort of the handicap chases and the handicappers you've got in the yard. OK Corral, who would of course have won the Grand National for you, had that been run, won the Great Yorkshire at Doncaster. How are you feeling about him this season?
I'm still feeling very, very miffed about the virtual Grand National, because he'd come into the Grand National having won the Great Yorkshire. And you'd say that was a perfect preparation. Derek O'Connor was going to ride him, knows the horse really well. I thought he was coming into the Grand National with a great chance. Anyway, I was sure we were going to win the virtual Grand National. And do you know what he did? Refused. Now, I tell you, I went ballistic. How could they dream that?
So blinkers next time then.
I was absolutely incandescent with rage.
So he's off 143. Is that a workable mark?
Yes, it is, yes.
How forward is he?
Good, he's doing everything we want. Yeah, he wants some soft ground. Well, not bottomless, but you wouldn't run him on fast ground.
I should imagine you're pleased that you've managed to sort of have a nice clear run with him, because I know sort of early on in his career...
Yeah, he was difficult to train, yeah. No, he's been good so far, and it's just a matter of where we go. You could look at the Ladbroke, but I don't know. we'll be hunting around in those sort of races, yeah.
Mr. Fisher, who's a horse I think hopefully there could still be some more to come from him, ran fourth in the Marsh Chase at the festival. Have you got any sort of inclinations to what his best distance may be over fences?
I think that's about right. Although I'd be surprised if we don't have a look at 3 miles sooner, possibly, rather than later. But he could win over 2 last year as well. Whereas 2.5 looked ideal. You'd probably say the most likely objective would be the Ryanair at the end of the day. But we'll see just where we tiptoe along and maybe have one look at him over 3 miles.
So would there be the big feature race at Cheltenham in November? Would that be something on the radar for Mr. Fisher?
I think 2.5 would be, I mean, it's not ideal for him probably because he's going to be pretty high in the handicap for an inexperienced horse. I mean, you might try and go down those second season races just to start with to give him a hand. But you'll probably start him over 2.5 and then maybe have a look at 3. And that will tell us where to go.
And a horse that's in a sort of very similar category, I suppose, to Mr. Fisher is Precious Cargo. He's a beautiful, massive, again, a typical sort of old-fashioned looking chasing type. Do you feel he is a stayer, or do you think he's a more speed horse?
I'm sure he's a stayer. He did win over 2. As you say, he is old-fashioned. He had a rather old-fashioned head. With Thomas Barr, we've agreed to call it noble. But what was very unlucky was when he got brought down at the second last in, what did he run in the
Northern
March?
Trust.
Yeah. At Cheltenham. And he got brought down and got a kick right on his nose there. And he actually, there was a fracture. And poor old boy, he came back very battered. But his already rather sort of, this noble head was, I don't say it was made any more noble, it was just made more prominent. If it was a lady, you would have definitely gone for plastic surgery, but it hasn't done anything for his looks, but that doesn't matter. He's a grand horse, loves soft ground, and will stay.
A horse that, again, sadly didn't make the Grand National was Beware the Bear, but is that the aim for him again this year?
Almost certainly, yeah, absolutely. It was the plan all the way through last year. He'd been great. I mean, he'd suddenly mastered his game. Took him right into the handicap at the top of it. But we had a wonderful year winning at the festival, and he won twice at Cheltenham that season. And really it was our own, by default, if you like, we'd actually learned how to ride him properly. We were always jumping out the gate saying, get up there and get on with it. Then he'd drop himself out and get to the back of the field, and then he'd always come home with a rattle. So we really just concluded, well, what is the point of starting at the front, to go to the back, to come back to the front, or try to get back to the front? Why not just start at the back? And with that, it was much easier for him because he didn't have to go forwards, go backwards, go forwards. He'd just start at the back and then quietly creep into the race. He's much happier doing it that way. You might think of the Beecher Chase or something like that, or say, do we go to Aintree in one go? There's a lot of horses that they'll do it once, they might not do it twice. Yeah, they either love it. Tiger Roll loves it. Yeah. I've seen horses that have been there once and looked brilliant and gone there the second time and said, no thanks. I know about this. I don't know, we'll see where we go.
A horse that really caught the eye, I think, for quite a lot of people up at Haydock sort of last February time was Caribbean Boy. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, great big bruiser of a chaser. Came from France, had missed his first year over here. Always looked like a chaser, would love soft ground. You know, he's going to make up into it. Trip, I don't know. He's not slow. And he's going to cart you along a little bit too. Yeah, I can see him bowling along. Whether it's over 2.5 or 3, I wouldn't know, but I expect he'll get to 3 at the end of the day.
As you said, he came over from France. He won on heavy ground at Haydock. Does he strike you as a horse that's with that action that he has to have heavy ground, or could you
I don't
run him
think he
on?
has to have it, but you're never going to run him on firm ground anyway. So he's a winter horse. Yeah.
He carries the same colours, of course, of Simon Manera and Isaac Suede, who own JANIKA. Is the Holden Gold Cup the early season target of him again?
It could be. I was quite surprised by that. In that I didn't really think he was a 2-miler. It'll be on the radar. There are several other races we have, and Andy Bromley likes playing in the programme book, so suits me. He does the homework for me. He likes planning and scheming and, well, not scheming, but spotting races for them. I would be surprised if he's a genuine 2-miler. I think he's a 2.5-mile horse.
Sticking with the horses that carry that famous double green now, how's good old Top Notch?
Great form. We did a little, we cauterised his palate not so long ago. Funny that his age would suddenly, but not surprisingly possibly, that his age suddenly needed a bit of attention. If he's been going that long, it's not surprising that screws need tightening up a bit every now and then. So we've just done that, and I think it'll help him. We just felt at the back end of last year he was starting just to make funny little noises at the back end of a race, and we could help him. No, he's in great form. Peterborough, I would think, would be. He won it last year, and I don't see why he wouldn't do it again.
A horse who we didn't see last year, but I believe he's back here at Seven Barrows, is TERREFORT.
TERREFORT, he's on his way back. He actually hasn't arrived yet, but he's due back any minute now. He's had a torrid time, poor boy. He was having a sabbatical anyway, with a bit of a leg problem, and he's lost an eye. Without an injury, it was just one of those things. Doesn't stop them. He always was a fantastic jumper. We've had them before with one eye, and you're probably better going the way round with your good eye on the inside, sort of thing. But it doesn't stop them, and they're extraordinary horses. They have sort of more peripheral vision than we do, so they can use one eye more effectively than we can use one eye. So we're looking forward to seeing him back, because he was a very, very good horse when he...
Because I know he was a horse who didn't really show you a great amount at home, did he? But
Well, I was very surprised when he won a handicap at Huntingdon first time out, off about 125, and then won 3 Group 1s. Well, it tells you what I know.
Champagne Platinum, just touch briefly on him. He was a smart novice last year. You put him in some good races. Well fancied for the Kinmure, ran well in that race. How are you feeling about him?
The Kinmure was too far. We started over 2. We're sort of starting all over again, really. He's been over to Henrietta Knights. He started off being a very good jumper, but I think it sort of worried him a little bit. We've done a lot of schooling, and I would think 2.5 is his trip. I'm almost sure. He didn't stay in Cheltenham, I'm sure. I'm not surprised. He works too well. It was just finding somewhere to go. We weren't going to get into the race we wanted. And so he got a run in the Kinmure. We thought it was a good idea, but it probably wasn't quite so clever.